Hey, welcome to another episode of Marketing Matters with Christie Welch. She's the Direct Food and Agricultural Marketing Specialist with the Ohio State University, located in South Centers, Ohio. Christie's going to be talking about selling local foods during the COVID-19 pandemic and what can local food producers do. So stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Matters with Christie Welch. Christie is the Direct Food and Agricultural Marketing Specialist at the Ohio State University South Centers. Christie, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
Well, thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be with you again. Today we're going to be talking about how the COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on our local food producers. And we'll share some information on resources as well as some of the things that local food producers here in Ohio have been able to implement so that they can continue to operate their businesses. You know, the governor and the United States Department of Agriculture have designated agriculture as an essential business. And so early on when the pandemic was first getting started, that was a question that a lot of not only consumers but producers had as well. And so once we got that clarified, we've been working with our local food producers to help them try to navigate this pandemic that I think, you know, is impacting all businesses and individuals. But it's just really been a interesting time, especially to be a business owner.
I know that you have been very active with many of the producers because of the COVID-19, the pandemic, et cetera. Have you had much trouble keeping pace with the local food producers?
It's been a challenge, again, I think for all businesses, especially in the early days when there were so many unknowns. Again, at first it was not clear that local food businesses like farm markets and farmers markets were considered essential businesses and were able to remain open. Again, once that clarification came from the authorities, just like a grocery store which sells food, our local food producers, of course, are selling food, and agriculture is an essential business. And so to help first clarify that yes, these are essential businesses, but then just trying to gather the information, the research-based and science-based information to help our producers move forward with their businesses. At first, it was a real challenge because it seemed like things were changing daily, if not more than that. So, good question.
What can food producers do to make it easy for us customers to acquire the kinds of foods that we're used to?
Well, that's a great question, Patrick. And so we're going to talk about some things that local food producers can do. I mean, the farmers are still farming. They're still growing their locally produced foods and value-added products. But things do look different. And so some of the things that we're going to talk about today is to do your homework. There are many resources available now to help you navigate this time. Again, because the situation is changing so quickly, you need to be flexible. And just because you have plan A to start the day, you might end up on plan D to finish the day. It's just been a real challenge. We're going to look at some examples from peers around the state and the country. And then I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to communicate. And so we're going to talk about that as well today.
Who are local food producers?
So here in Ohio, anybody that produces food, that when we talk about direct marketing and local food producers, it's not only those producers that sell directly to you as a consumer, so you buy the product from them and take it home, but they are anybody that produces food that goes ultimately to a consumer's table, but that might go through, you know, one of the things that's been really impacted are schools. We have local food producers that have been selling product into schools on a regular basis. Well, of course, the schools got shut down, right? So what do they need to do to pivot their businesses to move those products? And so anybody that's producing a food product here in Ohio, we look mainly at agricultural based and value added products. But, we have a lot of food processors in the state as well. Not really our target market to work with the clients in that manner, but anybody that's growing or producing food here in Ohio has been impacted by the pandemic.
So let's just suppose I start an acre in which I grow various different vegetables. Would I be one of your customers?
Absolutely. You certainly would. So we work with folks that have that acre or less, some, as little as a quarter of an acre or less. We work with folks that are multi-generation farm families that are producing local food to folks that are just getting started, and maybe they're even in an urban setting where they're trying to do the urban farming. And so we're really there to try to help any local food producer here in Ohio to be more effective marketers. In our minds, that translates to increased profitability, which translates into increased sustainability. And one of my interests is really encouraging that next generation of local food producers and farmers here in Ohio. Because if they go away, guess what? A lot of our farmland's going to go away as well. And then our food's going to come from other places. And so we kind of look at that whole picture to help our local food producers be successful. And the way we focus on that with our team is to help them be better marketers. But I will just say, in light of COVID, yes, marketing's a piece of that. But again, in those early days especially, is where do I get the information I need to make sound decisions for my business?
Let's just suppose this is the first year that I'm growing vegetables and I'm ready to go and sell.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying do my homework. Several places here. Is it mandatory that I contact these individuals on the screen?
It is not mandatory, but of course these are the regulators and the organizations, the government organizations that kind of set the rules, especially during the when we talk about the pandemic that we're going through. And so the Ohio Department of Health has a website there where they update multiple times a day to help you understand what requirements you need to implement to run your, not only a local food business, but any business here in the state of Ohio. The Centers for Disease Control, of course, is the federal agency that manages much of the information about the coronavirus and other diseases. And then the United States Department of Agriculture, of course, they are the organization at the federal level that really helps to develop policies and support our food producers throughout the country. So those are just some of the things there where you can go to find out on the local level with the Ohio Department of Health, as well as the statewide level, and then at the national level with the CDC and the USDA. But again, that is not a requirement. It's just a great place to help you understand what the current requirements are and what are some of the practices that might be helpful for you. And so when we talk again about doing your homework, of course, Ohio State University has a lot of resources as well. We have the Knowledge Exchange, or the COVID-10, that should say 19, I apologize, the COVID-19 hub, where there's many resources from across different colleges within Ohio State to help provide information on the pandemic. In March, when this all really kind of got going, especially here in Ohio, one of the things that people missed was there was no March Madness. That's it. Yeah. And so some of the folks within the College of Ag came up with this Ag Madness Tournament of Education. And so we had a whole bracket of educational events all throughout the month of March. And all of those webinars were recorded, and you can access them at that particular link there. And we did several of those in connection with our produce safety team. Again, early days of the pandemic, people were really wondering, what do we need to do to keep us safe, keep our food safe, and keep our customers and employees safe? So there are some great resources there. And then, of course, our team, the Direct Food and Agricultural Marketing team, has a COVID page on our website as well, where those recordings are housed, as well as some other resources. So again, when we talk about doing your homework from a local food producer, this particular homework that we're talking about is to educate yourself about the pandemic and what policies or procedures you might need to adjust for your particular situation.
I've had a chance to review a lot of the different videos, and it's just not about one specific topic.
It's not.
There is a multitude of different areas in which discussion is given, information is provided on a whole variety of different topics.
Yep, absolutely. I think there were 4 videos, regular videos every day through the month of March, and then there were some special events that were included in that as well. So tons of information, all the way from production to ag safety on the farm to, again, the produce safety team that we partnered with. We also did a webinar about options to implement online sales for your local food business. But there are many, many different topics on the Ag Madness Tournament of Education site.
It's well done.
Thank you. I thought they did a great job with that. And that was a really, it's been very popular, very well attended. And then even the recordings have been viewed multiple thousands of times. So it's been a really great event for our producers.
And I know that many of the videos surround vegetables, they surround fruit, they surround getting the soil tested, getting the soil ready. So it really provides a lot of information if you're interested in starting some kind of food producing acreage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great resources there from all aspects and all different programs throughout the College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Sciences. It's a great resource.
Because of the COVID pandemic, it seems that we have to be, as you put on the screen, flexible.
Absolutely. Flexibility is key. And so, as I mentioned early on, when in the beginning of March, when the governor first ordered the stay-at-home orders, we had a number of farmers markets that have been for years operating winter farmers markets. Well, what they were doing, many of them were being housed in gymnasiums in schools.
Huh,
now,
interesting.
What happened with the shutdown? The schools all closed.
Yeah.
So those farmers markets lost their physical space to continue their winter markets. And so many of them had to really scramble to continue offering those products directly to consumers. But they had to find a new space physically. They had to implement social distancing practices. One of the things that we really love about farmers markets as consumers is it's more than just a place to purchase your locally produced food. Yes, we love that. But the other thing that is really special about farmers markets is the ability to have that socialization with others in your community as well as the local food growers. Well, when the stay-at-home order was implemented, yes, we still needed to purchase food. But farmers markets then really had to kind of, the things that they've promoted over the years about how they help build community was, well, we can't do that now. So instead of the whole family coming to the farmers market, please only send one shopper. Many of them looked at, could we do online sales where the customer ordered before they came to the market, paid before they came to the market. And then some of our farmers markets throughout the state and farm markets even implemented a drive-through. So you had ordered and paid online, and then you drive through the market and the products that you ordered are placed in the trunk of your vehicle. So again, to help maintain that social distancing so that everybody can remain as safe as possible. But that was a real challenge for a lot of folks.
Does the state now regulate the farmer markets even more than prior to the COVID-19?
That's really an interesting question, Patrick. Again, because agricultural is an essential business, they are allowed to remain open and sell local foods. One of the things that actually was a little bit of a source of frustration for a lot of our local food producers was that early on, the state was pretty quiet about saying you need to do X, Y, or Z. And so again, I understand that they had multitude of issues that they were dealing with, and I'm sure they just were really overwhelmed with all the questions that they were getting as well. So the other thing that our team did, is we work a lot with the Ohio Farmers Market Network and the Ohio Produce Growers and Marketers Association, as well as a number of other organizations throughout the state that help educate and support our local food producers. And so we all came together and tried to work through what can we do, how can we get the answers that we need. And so through that collaborative effort and led by the Ohio Farmers Market Network, they put together a series of best practices that other farmers markets and farm markets around the country were implementing. And then we're able to take that to the state and say, can you give us your feedback on these? And the state said, yeah, these are great. We would appreciate you implementing these practices moving forward.
So let's suppose that I've grown my vegetables, and like so many other places that I've seen in the past, I have a little stand and I park my car somewhere on the road. And am I still able to do that?
Yep, you're still able to do that. Again, if you're selling food, that is an essential business. Just like, again, grocery stores are essential because they sell food and we all need to eat, right?
Yeah.
And so you can still do that. Again, the recommendations are make sure that you're doing everything that you can to have as little physical contact with your customers. The mask wearing is encouraged. The social distancing is encouraged. The hand washing, sanitizers, all those kinds of things, again, to make sure that we're all doing everything we can to keep everyone as safe as possible. So one of the things that the state did say to businesses of all types, not just food businesses, but to offer special hours for vulnerable populations. And so, for example, if I operate a farm market, I might have a couple days a week for an hour or two where we encourage vulnerable populations to come and shop, those that have pre-existing conditions that might make them more susceptible to the coronavirus. And so that's one thing that if you are operating your business, you do need to do to make sure that everyone has access.
I know that there are some farms that have that allow individuals to come and pick, like for instance, apples, strawberries, other kinds of foods. Has the COVID-19 curtailed that?
I don't know that I would say it's curtailed it. I think that consumers are really looking for opportunities to get out in nature and fresh air. And so those U-Pick operations that I have had contact with said the demand is very strong. Now, that doesn't mean you just open up and let people flood in. You still have to think about, even though that we're outside, how can we maintain social distancing and how can we maintain as little contact as possible? So for one example, based on the size of your operation, you may need to limit the number of people that go into the U-Pick at a given time. Just because we need to, again, maintain that minimum of 6 foot spacing between individuals. You need to encourage customers to wear masks. You need to encourage customers to wash their hands before they go into the U-pick field and when they come out of the U-pick field. So many producers have had to offer additional, most of them already have hand washing stations at the farms, but they've had to offer additional hand washing stations to meet the crowds. The other thing that a lot of pick your own operations have done in the past, traditionally it might be you could pick so many apples per pound. So you go out to the field, you pick them, bring them back in, they get weighed, and then you pay the price per pound on those apples. Well, what some producers have gone to, instead of doing a per pound price, it's a per container price. So instead of having to weigh those, you pay X amount for a particular type of container, and you go out and you pick your product, and then nobody else touches it once you've picked it.
Oh, okay.
So again, to help put those practices in place to limit the amount of hands that are handling product has been another thing that many producers have done.
Christie, we have about 9 minutes left.
Okay.
And I know I keep on asking questions because I find that for the most part, a lot of individuals don't know behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be a real challenge. And I will say that, you know, our agricultural folks are typically very innovative and resilient. And so many of them were able to pivot very quickly to continue to operate their businesses. But again, being flexible is one of those things that you have to really keep in mind because state recommendations can change pretty often. Are you implementing the recommendations that they've put forth? Have you talked with your local health department and what they are recommending at the local level? And then also look to your professional organizations like the Ohio Produce Growers and Marketers Association, like the Ohio Farmers Market Network, and some of those things. And then, you know, what are your peers doing and doing successfully? And again, those professional organizations can share what their members are doing, but just reach out to other folks that you know within the industry and what are they doing and doing it successfully. One of the things that we did early on when we talked about transitioning to online sales, we had a webinar as part of that Ag Madness tournament of education that we talked about, specifically talking about online sales. And so we had a couple different markets and a couple of different online sales platforms do a webinar where folks could look at, because there's a zillion options out there for online sales. So that peer-to-peer learning can just be invaluable. And then look beyond the state of Ohio. What are others around the country doing that you could tweak and implement for your particular operation? And then I think this is kind of the last thing, the last bullet point, Patrick, is just communication is so important. And when I talk about that, it's not only communicating with your family members and other employees that you may have, but it's communicating with your customers as well. And an easy way to do that, of course, is with signage. And I have a couple examples that we'll go through here in a minute. Have you shared your policies with your employees? That's so important. Don't just assume that they understand how things are operating this season. Make sure that you train them as well. And then, you know, make sure you share that with your customers as well. Social media, websites, newsletters. Again, farm markets and farmers markets, as at the beginning of the season, said, hey, folks, we're here. We're still growing our food products. You still have access. However, how you access that might look a little bit different. And so communicate, communicate, communicate. Here's an example that folks could put up at their U-pick operation that says, you know, we need to only enter the picking field with permission, check in with the farm personnel. Again, wash your hands before and after picking, wearing the mask, all those kinds of things that, again, the more ways that you can share that information with your employees and your customers and staff, the more it's really going to sink into folks as they're out enjoying your farm. Again, here's an example of a drive-through farmers market, a couple of them, and how they pivoted to offer that to their customers. So you have a map of what that was going to look like. When they ordered, this is who they put their name on the paper. So as they drove through the market, of course, then their product could be placed in the back of their vehicle, and then the product, of course, was all prepackaged. Staying safe, this is actually an example from the Illinois Farmers Market Association. This graphic is, I love my farmer's market, and the heart, of course, has a mask on it, again, reinforcing that mask wearing. And then what can you do to stay safe during the pandemic? Here's another one. When we talk about especially local foods, how many hands touch your food? Well, typically of local foods, it goes from the farm to the market to your table. But at a supermarket, depending on where that farm comes from, then there's travel and distribution and all of those kinds of things. And so, again, local food can be beneficial. When I mentioned hand wash stations, here's an example of a hand wash station that you can construct on your farm or farmer's market really effectively and fairly inexpensively. I had also heard from a lot of folks that used to rent or purchase hand washing stations. The rental ones were all spoken for, and if you wanted to purchase one, it wasn't available for delivery till July or August. So that's been very effective as well. And so I know we've kind of covered a lot of information here pretty quickly, but if you have additional questions or would like additional information, here's my contact information, my phone number and email address, and then there's our web address where we have some of those resources on our direct marketing page about some of the things we've talked about today.
Regardless of whether we're in a COVID pandemic or not, a lot of the information that you gave really applies at all times.
Absolutely, Patrick. That's a very good point. And I've heard a lot of health experts say, we should have been washing our hands correctly and often for a long time. So that's a very good point. A lot of these points apply all the time.
Hey, we're talking with Christie Welch. She's the Direct Food and Agricultural Marketing Specialist with the Ohio State University South Centers. Christie, it's always a pleasure talking with you on Marketing Matters, and I look forward to our next telecast.
Thank you.